Just treat me the way you want to be treated. I'm no different from you and no one else. 'Cause you know I have it. There's plenty of people walking around out there that you don't know have it. You are right up in their face and treating them just as nice can be. So just give me that same respect.
The human immunodeficiency virus is the causative agent of AIDS. People tend to confuse the terminology HIV positive with having full-blown AIDS. It's sort of like if somebody were sitting next to you and had a cold and was sneezing and coughing, you probably have the virus in your body, but you wouldn't say that you have a cold.
How I was infected doesn't upset me because I really feel kind of like it was my fault. I don't feel like I know it was my fault because if I wouldn't have been promiscuous, I wouldn't be having to even deal with this disease.
I have a strong and beautiful relationship with God. And it's very painful to have to hear and live with people judging you because of a disease.
Last year, as a part of my effort of educating the public, spoke more than 100 times to more than 15,000 people on the topic of AIDS and HIV. Many people still don't know how this disease is and is not transmitted. Many people fear it because they don't understand the modes of transmission. The way that this virus works is very simple, and it's been known since 1986. Virus particles falling on mucous membranes, such as the linings of the nose, the mouth, the sexual organs, the digestive tract, can infect you. The immune system functions to destroy that virus, and in the process, the virus infects the CD4 T cells of the immune system, and over a period of time destroys those T cells. Since the T cells are the captain of the immune system, someone who has no T cells has no immune system. Then opportunistic infections come in and actually kill a person.
My source is more than likely to have been a transfusion because I had 6 of them before 1981. And none of my unprotected sex partners are HIV positive.
Preparing for the end of my life, I don't know how would you get prepared to do that. I don't know if anybody can prepare for the end of their life. No, they just know, I don't know when I might go. I don't know that. So I haven't prepared for death. I don't think you can prepare for death.
The virus is transmitted through 4 body fluids. It's a very fragile virus, so it's not survivable out in the environment, but it's transmitted through the blood, semen, vaginal secretions, and mother's milk. And unless you're exposed to those 4 fluids, any one of those 4 fluids, you're not going to be vulnerable to the virus.
As I travel around the country, I have the opportunity from time to time to do abstinence presentations in public high schools. And after the presentations, I'm usually taken to a place like the library to allow students to come and talk with me about what they've heard about HIV and about abstinence. I was in a school not too long ago, and a little young lady came in to see me, and I could tell right away that she was worried. She had obviously done a risk activity. She had been exchanging body fluids, and in her case, it was a sexual risk activity. So I talked with her, and I said, "What are you afraid of?" And of course, she said she was afraid of dying. She said, "What am I supposed to do? When should I be tested? How often should I be tested?" And I told her that if you've done a risk activity recently, you need to be tested 3 times during the next year. And the reason for that is this. After you're exposed to the AIDS virus, it takes 2 weeks to 6 months for antibodies to develop. The test that they use to detect AIDS is an antibody test. So if you've done a risk activity, you need to get tested 3 times in the next year to determine that you are or are not infected with HIV. I guarantee you that young lady will die 1,000 deaths between the time she gives the blood and the time the test results come back. You see, people don't want to know that they're going to die, but they need to know in the age of AIDS so that they can get the medical care that they need and so that they can stop spreading this disease to other people.
I don't think the numbers are comprehensible to young people. It's much bigger than they think it is, I think. Get some education and live your life in such a manner as to not get it yourself.
there is no one to blame but myself. And so if I'm going to be angry with anyone, it will be with myself. And I'm not angry with myself because it just happened that way.
It is so preventable. It is so easy to prevent and really rather difficult to get. You have to go through some changes to get this virus. You know, you have to have unprotected sex, and that's not one of the things you have to have. That's not something that happens in a split second. Think about it for a minute. It takes, it takes some time for all of those actions to turn into unprotected sex. You have time to think.
I heard the story of a 16-year-old girl in Pennsylvania whose father was a pastor. She was a virgin. She fell in love with this wonderful hunk of manhood. He said he was a virgin. He lied. He was HIV positive. Now she is. Her first sexual experience will probably be the one that killed her. Yes, she'll live until she's 27 or 28, but she'll die because this disease gives you no second chance.
Before you use a needle for any reason, there's some thought time allowed there. You have to use it. You have to think about me. You can think about me if you want to. I've got 6 grandchildren who's going to lose their grandmother. So what if it isn't because of something I did? I still have it. Think about your future. Think about your children. Think about your loved ones. And then do yourself a favor and think about yourself, because although it's going to hurt my family very, very much when I go, I'm the one that's going to be dead.
The best way to keep yourself from becoming exposed to the virus is not to come into contact with the 4 body fluids: blood, semen, vaginal secretion, and mother's milk. This means that if we're talking about young folks, that means not becoming sexually active, though the pressure is tremendous to do so.
Families all over the world have had to open up their minds and their hearts and broaden their views and kind of examine their acceptance about homosexuality, drug abuse, promiscuity, about all kinds of things that they, before AIDS came to the world, they had to shun. And that's bad. Get away from me. I'm not involved in that. That's not me. And if you're my son, oh, you're gay. Oh. Now, what I have seen happen, families have had to realize that their love for that person in their family that has HIV is stronger than even their judgmentalness. It's stronger. Love is more important.
Some people treat people with AIDS badly, and that's because of their own fear of the disease or their lack of understanding of how the disease is transmitted. I believe that we need to educate people as to how this disease is and isn't transmitted so that their fear is lessened. People with AIDS have been given a death diagnosis. We need to treat them with compassion. We need to treat them with care. We need to treat them as people who aren't going to be around very long. And that means we need to be gentle with them. We need to help them as we can. We need to show the grace of God in our life by being compassionate to them.
People with AIDS should be treated the way that you would treat yourself. And if you put the shoe on your feet that I'm wearing, it would be you would think a whole lot different if you have anything negative to say about people with AIDS now. You get it, then you can comment on it. If you're just looking at TV and think that this is not you, this couldn't happen to me, this guy's just up talking, you better stop and think again, because this is my bedroom with cameras, lights, and here. You could be sitting right here if you don't listen. So please, if you don't ever listen to anything anyone tell you, always remember that I told you, abstain from sex until married.
It was bad. That was the life of a gangster. That's what you do. You go to jail, you're down to go to jail. I like going to jail. Every single day, you gotta watch your back. We're in bad neighborhoods over there, you know, and it's a whole bunch of gangsters all over on the east side. That's where we'll, you know, you kick back. You go into somebody else's neighborhood, it's hardly likely you'll come out of it unless you're going there for a reason, for a drive-by or something. That's the only time. You gotta look over your back, you know, you never know when somebody's gonna come invading the neighborhood, you know, come in there and perpetrating, and you know, you always gotta stay strapped, have your gats, guns, whatever you wanna call them. Another time I did some shootings, you know, I was just kind of watching my back. I was making sure I was all right. It's either me or them.
Killing people, you know, it ain't right, you know, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
I was never really a big person that wanted to shoot people. I mean, I've been in drive-bys. I've been in cars that done drive-bys, but I haven't done that many drive-bys by myself, or with me shooting. I don't know. Some people they kill. You know, some people they take a gun to you, and wherever they shoot you, if you live, you live. You know, they'll shoot you in your chest or your head purposely.
It was bad. That was the life of a gangster. That's what you do. You go to jail, you're down to go to jail. I like going to jail. Violence is good. It made me harder. The more you take, the more you can give, the more you can handle again.
You know, I've been in jail since, I don't know, good 4 or 5 years, off and on. And I've been getting in trouble all my life. People just do what they want to do. And violence, everyone does something once in a while, you know. Someone's gonna kill somebody or whatever. Take what they want to take if they can't pay for it themselves, you know.
I cannot picture myself being happy. I've never really been happy. I've been getting in trouble since I was little, whether it was school, family, whatever. Just always had a lot of hate from my dad. I guess my dad kind of passed it on to me. And I don't know, didn't care about nobody, really. I was selfish.
You know, I had nothing better to do. You know, I had problems at home. I had problems at school. My life was hell, so I thought, you know, I might make my life more hell than it was. So, you know, you do all this getting in trouble and, you know, enjoying the violence because you want to be respected by your own group of, you know, it's kind of like getting respected by your family. You know, you do good, you respect your mom, you know, like that. But here you do violence to respect.
To show them that, you know, that you're down to do whatever, you know, you need to do for your hood. You know, you have to prove them and literally show them, like shooting drive-bys, whatever, jacking people, you know, whatever, you know. It's like Miguel, it's like he said, man, it's just respect.
A lot of people get in a gang for backup, for help against violence, and I don't agree with that. You know, where we come from, we're in the neighborhood, that's where we're at. You know, we're defending our own. We all keep together, you know. I mean, we're whatever. There's gangs in different types, you know. I mean, like a dog crowd, that's a gang, you know. I mean, it's just that we choose the violent way to you know, our lives are in jeopardy every single day. Every time we leave the doors of our house, we have to carry around something. On the streets, it's scary out there, you know. I admit, a lot of people don't, but I admit that it's scary out there, you know. It's a crazy world.
Well, for me, it was an adrenaline rush. You know, I steal cars, I take cars and get chased by the police, you know, back and forth all over the place. If I need a ride or whatever and I'm stranded or something, I'm gonna take a car. I had a different car every week, you know. I stole everything from little Volkswagen Bugs to Porsches. If you're young and you have a criminal record, and no one will hire you because you have a criminal record, you have to make money somehow. It's
not like what you hear on media, how all we do is just kill each other off. It's not like that. Most of the time, we're defending ourselves. Most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. It's you or them.
And usually, we just go down the street with the lights off, and you know how people like blink the lights on and tell you the lights off? Well, when that happens, you're supposed to follow that car until they stop, and you're supposed to get out, and you're supposed to beat the out of them and take the money and, you know, take the car and everything. And you're supposed to do a hit and run with the car and leave it and just keep on doing that over and over.
It's the only life I know when I'm out there. It's the only way I know. It's just now I'm starting to discover new things, see what new things are like. I don't know what I'm doing now, really.
I regret it because I mean, if I looked at my life now compared to what I used to be, you know, I found myself as being someone positive, you know, someone that doesn't do all that stuff that he used to. And, you know, I know it's violence, I know it hurts people, but, you know, then, you know, I didn't really care about things, you know. just did what I wanted to do because that was just my life.
Now it's kind of hard dealing with that. Now I did all these things in the past. I really regret it because it's a mental thing. Now you got mental battles with your head, things you wish you never did. Now I choose to take the path of God and take a different routine of life. A path that'll make me happier, a path that'll help me so I stay out of trouble, and help me with my, my family values. I never really thought much of my family, and now I'm trying to take it. That way I gotta give more love, and God does that.
When a demon possesses your body, it totally takes over. And you say and do things you have no control over. And there is no way of escaping that.
In Christianity, we worship God and we pray to Jesus Christ, and we even involve angels in our theology. In Satanism, Satanists worship Satan. They call upon demons, which are fallen angels, to carry out some of their destructive deeds.
I had a father who, until I was 12 years old, was a proclaimed atheist and used to just beat me physically. And pretty severely. But at 12 years old, he decided to go to church. I don't know what started that. But he continued to beat the crap out of me and drag me to church and scream and yell and cuss at us all the way that we got to church. But he was a choir director. So when we got there, it changed. It certainly didn't do anything to my dad other than make it worse and more confusing. So that's about when I began to withdraw into myself, withdraw into other options, because I know this God was not an option for me at the time.
One thing is consistent among all Satanists and ex-Satanists that I've ever interviewed. They all come from a broken or troubled family.
I was not loved or accepted. I remember one time when I was 16, my dad just literally telling me that. And those things cut deep.
These kind of people that are involved in occult and Satanism will often be looking for that person that needs love in their life or needs some kind of companionship or feeling like they belong, and before they know it, they're sucked into hardcore Satanism.
I began to really find myself reaching out beyond the alchemy and the tarot and the palmistry into demonology, and I began studying demonology.
They're generally introduced into maybe what we could call lesser types of occult activity, witchcraft or various types of maybe even some type of voodoo activity, and they're progressively looking for kind of a new high, and members within these groups introduce them to these new types of activity, and eventually they get into hardcore Satanism.
I invited spirits to possess my body, and I went through a ceremony that I had found in a book. And I did it by myself. I didn't have tons of people around or black robes or anything. I just had myself and my open heart and my vulnerable spirit that I laid before Satan. I began to seek out having demons live in my body. That began to become my highest goal. I was feeding that. It's kind of like when you go to church and you have worship music and the whole congregation gets up and they sing, you know, wonderful worship songs and lift their hands to the Lord. Well, the enemy has the same thing. Satan has the same type of worship that he receives, and that worship is played out through many of the bands that are out there. And one of my choice, my worship band, was Black Sabbath. I began to seek what it began to feed me. Over and over and over, the things that you hear, you begin to They begin to process and move down into your spirit, and you begin to desire that.
They call upon demons, they call upon Satan, sometimes for personal power, other times to maybe cause some type of a destructive influence on other people. Satanists also many times rely on some other things, sometimes satanic rock music, sometimes they have coven meetings. So there's a lot of variety, yet some structure to Satanist services. These ceremonies exist and they're practiced, and Satanists, even more so than Christians, I find they believe their ritual more than Christians do, and they practice their beliefs in calling up demons more than we even rely on prayer as Christians.
Even as my parents continued to drag me to church, and I was going entirely the other way, I would go to church and go to youth group from time to time and smile and sing a solo once in a while in church and hang out with people. But the whole time the sermon was being preached, I'd sit there and curse everything that was being said, and every mention of Jesus Christ I would curse silently in my spirit.
And it's not uncommon for Satanists to actually go to Christian churches for the purpose of disrupting those in various ways and to cause various types of problems through their conjuring of demons. Even in the U.S. military, there's a manual put out to chaplains that actually spells out the satanic service ritual that a chaplain is to perform if someone says they are a Satanist and practice Satanism.
I began to just become obsessed with inviting a spirit to enter my body. When I got into the service, I began at that point very actively burning the scriptures at night, driving my roommates crazy. I began to chant. I began to literally go over the deep end. Satan was beginning to sink his claws into me. One night, I had been, again, just totally obsessed, and everywhere I was going in my heart and in my mind, asking, opening myself, making myself available to a demon. That happened. A spirit overtook my body. All I remember is that I was sucked. It was like being sucked back and bound, and this thing filled the outside of me, and I was helpless to stop it at that point. And I began to chase people like an animal on all fours and tearing at them. And after some time of that, the MPs were called, and I remember I could see all this, but I was helpless to stop it. It was like I was in this cylinder inside of me, and this thing had taken over, and I couldn't do anything. And so I ran, it ran, into the barracks, and the MPs, the military police, chased me into the barracks. And then I woke up in the strapped down in solitary confinement in the psychiatric ward.
As a Satanist, one of his biggest objectives is to become demon-possessed, to find those demons somewhere and become demon-possessed.
And I put a shotgun to my head, and I was just ready to paint the walls with my brains. And one small thing came through. And that was, I remember that somebody once told me, just give Jesus a chance.
To help someone that's in the occult or Satanism, particularly if they want to get out, we must remember that this is a spiritual warfare going on, and that you're dealing with a person who believes and has seen the power of Satanism and demons, more so many times than a Christian has ever seen the power of prayer or the power of angels. Usually it takes some type of professional help, a professional counselor, to get someone out of Satanism. But if you want to do something in the very beginning, before they get this deep into Satanism, be there when they need love, when they need a companion, when they need someone that cares about them. As a Christian, the more we are caring and nurturing for our fellow man, whether that person's a teenager or an adult, we can stop them from actually going into occultism and Satanism.
And I put the gun down, and I just remember I just said, Jesus, if you're really there, if you're real, I need you to be real to me. It's the love of Jesus that delivered me and changed my life. That's what I heard. I'd had enough condemnation. And Jesus made that difference.
I would love to be a parent. I think it'd be lots of fun. And then I guess sometimes it'd probably be really hard.
They have this control over me, and we've gotten into a lot of clashes over that.
Parents, I guess, in my life are really important because they help me out with everything that I do. And I know a lot of teenagers tend to just get sick and tired of parents and stuff like that, but I think they're there for a reason. I mean, God gave them to us because we can learn a lot from them, and they know a lot more about life than I sure do. I know that.
My own parents are incredible. They're the best people that I know, and they're so different in their personalities that they have made, I think, 3 really great kids. And what I mean is that we can go out in the world and we're not too scared of what's going to happen.
I had a rough childhood living with my mom. She was never there for me. I went to school in the day, she worked at nights, so I had to fend for myself, teach myself various things, and learn what I see from talking to my friends and hanging out.
My parents are they like having control. They went to religious schools, both of them, their entire schooling, except for college. And my mom, to make it worse, she came from old Mexico, so she has old world traditions. And when she was younger, she couldn't date till she was 21. And my dad didn't date till he was 18. And then it comes me. They told me 16. And I wasn't used to having people tell me what to do because they never really told me. I've always been able to do what I needed to do. And they have this control over me. And we've gotten into a lot of clashes over that.
My parents are a lot different than my friends' parents, and trying to fit in with my friends and stuff. They do a lot of different things than I do. They go to parties and stuff, and I don't go to parties. And I've been raised in a Christian home ever since I've been adopted into my family. But I think parents are one of the most important people in the world. My parents, since I'm the oldest, my parents treat me, I think, with a little bit more, they give me a little bit more responsibility than maybe I have a little brother who's 10, and they're like, well, no, Kyle can't do that because he's younger. But being the oldest, I think they treat me differently because I'm older, not in a, that I love them more or something, because I know my parents, they love us all the same.
My parents are different with my brother than they are with me, and different with my older sisters than they are with me. They treat my sisters like, oh, you've never done anything wrong, and same with my brother, and I get blamed for different stuff that my brother doesn't. They will say, oh, he's just the cutest, and then they just won't say anything to me. They'll just go off and do something else, or say something else about my brother.
And I think my parents are cool, because they let me do a lot of things, but as long as I get my chores done and just go to bed on time and do just anything, like cook dinner sometimes, and they'll let me do anything I want, so they're cool.
I really don't care because I know that other people will react different than my parents will. And My parents, I don't care what they say about me or my brother. It just doesn't bother me. I'm so used to having them do that to my brother, and it's been happening for so long, I just don't care anymore.
My father was murdered when I was 10 years old. And so I lived with my mom. I really didn't know him that much, but it still affected me knowing that I'll never have a chance to go and know him. Well, I think fathers are important because they teach their son or daughter what the mother couldn't. I mean, because mothers, they grow up in this sort of way, and fathers grow up another sort of way. And so basically, you get both sides of both sides of the story. It can make you a better person because you have both parental figures there, and you see it everywhere else.
And as my friends' parents, I know a lot of them, their parents just let them go, let them do what they want to do. And I wish my parents would be like that at some point. But then again, I've noticed a lot of my friends that have parents that just don't care end up getting into trouble.
And I think that there are some people who are meant to be parents and some people who definitely aren't. And parents are people, so they're just like everyone else. Some are good and some are bad and some are in between and some are horrible.
My friends' parents, sometimes I don't understand their way of life because they're not Christians, and it's hard to understand why they would let their kids do some of the things that they do.
I see how their parents treat them, and I see how I do not want to treat my kids. The same way I was treated by my mom wasn't that good at all. And the same way they're treating them. It's like they're restricted, they have no freedom. Little petty things upset them, and they don't sit down and communicate when they need to.
I like my friends' parents better because I haven't known them as long as I've known my own parents. And they're just, in my opinion, my friends' parents are nicer, unlike my parents, because I've known them so long, and and with my friends, their parents, I can tell them something. With my parents, I can't tell them the same thing.
Parents are definitely important in my life and in anyone's life.